Good morning and welcome to another episode of Bold Business. I'm David Grasso from Gen FKD, a nonprofit dedicated to helping millennials understand money and entrepreneurship. You may recognize my co-anchor this morning if you followed the news in Baltimore in recent years. Kwame Rose is a social activist and artist as well as a Huffington Post contributor. Thanks for joining me, Kwame.
Oh, thank you for having me on Bold.
Absolutely. Kwame's part of Baltimore Rising, an HBO documentary directed by The Wire actor Sonia Sohn that captures the aftermath of Freddie Gray's death in Baltimore. Take a look at the documentary trailer.
Come here. Are you still representing Kwame? He just got arrested. I wish I was kidding.
A whole lot of living to do. Don't ruin your future with that bullshit. I want you to be smart, not just for Baltimore, but for Kwame.
It's not about what you do with your life, but it's about the legacy that you leave. Freddie Gray sparked a movement, an uprising inside of our minds, and the most powerful thing that we can do is keep fighting for that.
Well, you're not in cuffs right now, Kwame. I saw you up there. That sounds like a lot.
I don't have a bullhorn anymore.
No. Well, we have you here. We're calm now. Yeah. But when does the documentary come out?
The documentary comes out, it's set to be released on HBO November 20th. And actually, the president of HBO a few weeks ago announced that it'll be streamed for free. So you don't have to have an HBO subscription to watch the movie.
Oh, well, that's good. I don't have one, so that's perfect.
Hey.
I think my parents have one, so if they gave me the password, you know how a lot of times
Yeah,
you get
like-
HBO third hand? It's like
the
your
Netflix
ex-girlfriend's cousin gives you the... Yeah.
They say a relationship is over when they change the Netflix password.
Yeah,
so.
well, my Netflix password is still the same. But anyway, more about that later. We have more guests than ever for this episode of Bold Business, so we're going to get going right to our first segment. Our first guest is the worldwide general manager of Kiehl's, a New York-based personal care brand that's more than 166 years old. Cheryl Vitali oversees the brand's worldwide strategy, product innovation, and retailing marketing plans. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you, David. It's nice to be here. Hi there.
Cheryl, how are you?
I'm great today. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, and you come bearing products.
I take it wherever I go. Exactly. We're a brand that's never advertised, so we really rely on word of mouth and generating, love via our products. And
I see a lot of your corner stores here in New York. You have quite a presence here in New York. But for people who don't know what Kiehl's is, what is it?
Yeah, well, Kiehl's is primarily a skincare brand, and amazingly, it's unisex for men and women, frequently use the same products, and we're global. We have over 3/4 of our business is actually outside of the U.S. today, but we started here in New York City 166 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved? So it's not just about Kiehl's, it's also about Cheryl. How did you end up, you've been at Kiehl's now for how long?
8 years, and this is my dream job.
It is your dream job. So you're not leaving anytime soon. You're staying
real
right
happy.
where you are.
Yeah.
So tell us about it. What about your journey? How did you get to the glamorous world of Kiehl's?
Right. Well, I've been in the beauty industry for virtually my entire career, but I did start my own skincare line once. So I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and it didn't work. But I then joined this big company called L'Oreal and said I have a dream someday, which is to run the Kiehl's brand, because I thought it would be very entrepreneurial and had a lot of upside opportunity. And I got the job eventually, and it's been nothing but excitement ever since. It's an amazing, amazing opportunity because Kiehl's has a real story. It's an authentic brand. It has real values, and it's always been about the customer. And so I think it's always been about having a relationship with the customer and understanding what they want and need. And now more than ever, that's really driving the beauty industry, is what customers want.
You said that Kiehl's is never advertised, that you all never advertise, you rely on word of mouth.
Yeah.
How do you do that in 2017, where every time I log on to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram now, there are ads for things I don't want? So how do you create a brand that continues to be successful after 166 years, and still there's no advertisement?
And we don't have celebrities represent our products. It's even both. We rely on our fans, basically, and we really have always relied on word of mouth. Today, with digital, it becomes even more empowering for people that love us to talk about us. But we're generous. We give samples everywhere in the world. We don't advertise anywhere in the world. And it's an authenticity that I think people really understand, and very much millennials understand. It's no hype. It's direct. It's transparent. It's important.
So yeah, one of our Facebook questions here, we always take questions from the audience. It's
Okay.
always very interesting. Is it hard to connect with customers being such a big brand, is their question?
Not for us. I think we're all attuned now to more social listening, but a lot of the connection we also have with our customers happens in our retail stores. We're really a service brand, and we always have been. So it's not new to have a conversation with your customer. What is newer in the 166 years is how digital really enables that now.
So what products have you brought to market? Because you've been there for 8 years. So anything exciting that we would recognize?
Yeah, probably two very different things. If I could show,
Sure,
can I
of
show them
course.
to you?
Yeah, no, we're dying to
Okay.
see what's in the bag.
Well, here's the latest. This is called Calendula Mask, and it has hand-picked calendula petals in it, suspended in the gel. Masks are huge right now. Women and men are using them all around the world, and this has become a phenomenon in only 6 months. So this would be one of the newest and most exciting.
Is it an exfoliant then?
No, it's a calming, soothing, hydrating product.
Really?
Yeah, you take it off and your skin looks better and it feels a little more radiant. So it's a great product. And then one that I worked on forever with a great team in-house is actually personalized skincare. With your name on it, you get a special consultation, you take this home, it's complete invention, there's nothing else like it. And you put into this base 2 different boosters that target 2 skin concerns you alone have that you've done with one of our KCRs, our Kiehl's consultants. We go through the process together and you take this home. And this is our most efficacious products. So completely different exampons, but this was developed in conjunction with the consumer, basically.
Wow.
Yeah. So very different.
Just by here, you just know exactly what I need. You know that those boosters just looking at my face.
Well, let's say we'd have a starting point together. But we'd talk about it a little.
You said the products are both they're unisex. My barber just started doing the facials in the barber chair, and he charges a lot of money for that. How affordable are your products, and what is the value if they're not affordable? What's the value of investing in your products for skincare needs?
That's right. Well, they're very accessibly priced, first of all. So a lot of times people coming upon us for the first time are surprised at our price point.
Well, they seem nice.
Yeah,
You know?
but there's a lot of efficacy and a lot of value for the money that we charge. And we always say we put our money into our formulas, not into advertising. And that's the truth. And our packaging is, I think, beautiful, but super simple. It's not overdone. So the money, if you will, that you're paying for is really in what you're going to put on your face.
Do you think it makes a big difference, Cheryl, since you've worked in different places when you really are a fan of the product? And in your case, I mean, this product existed in your head and you brought it to market.
Yeah.
Does it really inspire you to go to work every day?
It does, but I think for me what inspires me the most is my love of the brand. And I think that's really what's unbelievable is we have a real culture. We're located here, we're headquartered here in the West Village. We are sort of a standalone group, and it's a very collaborative group. I've got all age groups, all ethnicities. We're really focused on staying connected to the customer. But our real guideline is the fact that we have a real history as a brand. And it's really authentic, and you buy into that if you work on Kiehl's and you kind of live the brand. So the products are great, but the brand is omnipresent.
You said that 3/4 of the company's business right now happen overseas. What countries and what impact do you see Kiehl's having in those countries and those economic markets as well?
The big surprise for most people is that we're really quite powerful and a strong brand in Asia, specifically China,
Okay.
where we
Great
really
place to be, yeah.
exactly, and our primary customer base there is actually millennials. So we're super on trend there. People appreciate in China our authenticity. I think that's the headline. The products work, but we're transparent, we're honest. They like that we have a real history. They like that there's service. It's a nice story.
So you're connecting with millennials, something that many companies have trouble doing.
Right.
And the demographics are shifting in our favor. What do you think companies need to do to talk to millennials? Is authenticity a big part of that?
I think it's a non-negotiable with millennials. I think we have a pretty sophisticated customer out there in millennials. They've seen a lot. They have a strong point of view. They feel they see hype when they know it. And you have to be honest. You have to be transparent. And you have to engage them. You have to talk to them and not sell to them. Talk to them. I think that's the difference.
So before we leave you, Cheryl, I always ask all my guests, what advice do you have? Because you enjoy your job. You know, that's something workplace satisfaction affects so many facets of our life.
That's right.
What, for someone who aspires to work in, you know, a glamorous position like yourself, what would you say to them?
What's important,
Yeah.
if you are not sure but you want to experience the industry, take any job you can get. Just start. I think that's important. And then once you're up and running, if personal life balance is important to you, and it is to me, and I think it is to a lot of millennials, make sure you are sure about what lines you want to draw for your own personal life and draw them, because nobody draws them for you, and live with that. And then you could actually be really happy going to work every day.
Wow, that's great advice. So foot in the door.
Foot in the door.
And then
Draw your lines once you're up and running, and enjoy it. Life is too short.
Cheryl Vitali from Kiehl's. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on Bold. It's great.
Of course. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Warith Jumuah. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Joining us, he's a motivational speaker, a fashion designer, and the CEO of Passionate Rebel LLC, a new fashion and lifestyle movement brand. He's here to chat about why he started his own business. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Jumuah.
Jumuah?
But you prefer El Amin?
Elamin, yeah. Elamin is my middle name.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's dope.
So, according to the story I saw, you lost your job. That's why you started your brand.
During the period of when I actually lost my job, I had already had Passion Rebel up and running, but it was like when I lost my job, it kind of like moved me in the direction of pursuing it like fully. So that was kind of like the motivating factor in me having Passion Rebel up and running like full time.
Wow.
And you're from Newark.
From Newark.
And you actually went to school in my hometown, Baltimore, Maryland. You went to Morgan State.
Morgan State University.
Just celebrated their homecoming last weekend.
Yeah, I was out there for it. Yeah.
All right. Well, talk where you come from in your struggle. We see Newark is a place that is very economically deprived. What do you hope to? How do you hope to impact Newark from creating a successful brand and being an independent entrepreneur?
I guess mainly just providing hope. And I think a lot of individuals throughout the world, they kind of want that inspiration to go into the field of entrepreneurship and following their dreams. And for a lot of us, we kind of get deterred from it because we kind of conveyed the idea that we had to follow like the normal route of going to school or just having a 9-to-5. And a lot of times when people are put in tough situations, they don't know what to resort to because they aren't familiar with I guess, other routes. So for me, I kind of just want to instill in people the importance of being who you are, embracing who you are. Because for one, if you have the creative ability to possibly change the world or inspire people, I think you have like a moral obligation to do it. And you shouldn't be deterred from it because for one, that can be the change that kind of pushes the world forward, not only the world, but also the culture forward. And you can also change a lot of people's lives,
So you said you're a brand movement.
Brand movement, yeah.
So tell us what a brand movement is.
So aside from being an actual clothing line, we kind of created ourselves to be, multifaceted as far as connecting different platforms. And for one, I mean, I always had an eye for fashion, but I never really wanted to have a fashion line just based off I felt like that whole lane has become oversaturated. But if I was gonna do fashion, it's because for one, I know it will allow us to fully immerse ourselves to connecting with people, and also just really wanting to connect with the community and give the community hope. So, like the fashion just gives awareness of what we do, but more so we're trying to create opportunities for people in the community, networking events, or even just touching the people that really need it. So.
You have a brand that everybody nowadays makes clothes and sells clothes. Kanye West. I even have T-shirts. I don't have T-shirts. you gotta get some T-shirts. How do you take your brand, a startup independent company, and how do you make it unique so that people support you and that even investors can get behind your product? What makes your brand unique in that sense?
For one, being genuine, but also for Passionate Rebel is about rebelling against the idea of not being able to follow your passion. So again, like I stated, it goes outside of clothing because for one, we're not just about selling anyone clothing. If I do sell you clothing, I want you to get something from it. I want it to inspire you and to represent you and everything. So for one, I mean, you got to have a vision that's conducive to the needs of the people. That's how people support you and appreciate what you're doing. And also, you have to give reasoning to why it's important for you to do what you do and for being who you are. So that's in a sense, that's what I believe separates us from a lot of brands.
So before we leave you, we always ask everyone the same question. What advice do you have for people who want to start their own brand?
For people that want to start your own brand, you have to, for one, allow your passion to stimulate your hustle. Two, you have to understand that there are a lot of people who have become more fearful than fearless. So you have to go outside that box and understand that everything that you do day to day is always a positive result at the end. There's always a positive result at the end, and no matter what you go through or wherever you start, you can always move yourself up. And another thing, a lot of people always ask me, like, what if I don't have money to do something? It's not about the money, it's all about the strategy.
Well, the creator of Passionate Rebel, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Next up, we have Jennifer Stybel joining us. She's the executive director of Rent the Runway Foundation. She's the co-founder of Rent the Runway, a well-known brand with more than 1 million members. Now she's leading Project Entrepreneur in partnership with UBS to break traditional barriers along women's paths. Good morning, Jennifer.
Hi, David. Nice to meet you.
How's it going?
Going well.
So tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I run Rent the Runway Foundation, which is a nonprofit, and we support women entrepreneurs through our program Project Entrepreneur. So Rent the Runway, the company, democratizes fashion. The founders, Jen Hyman and Jenny Fleiss, created the foundation to democratize entrepreneurship.
That's right. Absolutely. And he was telling me that your ex-girlfriend had Rent the Runway, right?
Yeah. I think she used to rent some of the dresses when we went out.
Absolutely. So what do you do for Project Entrepreneur? How does it work? There's a lot of moving parts to Project Entrepreneur. I got the list.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So basically you're trying to help women get into entrepreneurship, correct?
Yes, and to help them build scalable companies. What we're seeing is that women are actually starting companies at a greater rate than the national average, but only 10% of those companies are high growth. So how do we get more women building the multi-million, billion-dollar companies and help to provide them with the tools and the resources and the networks that they need to succeed? So Project Entrepreneur was founded 3 years ago in partnership with UBS, and we have a venture competition which is open right now, and we're accepting applications through November 27th. And we will have 200 companies that will be the members of the class of 2018, and they'll come to New York City from across the country for a 2-day intensive. And of those companies, 12 will pitch a panel of judges, 5 will win $10,000 grants and admission into our accelerator program.
Wow. This company, Rent the Runway, started in 2009 and has already grossed over $100 million. What are the avenues that other young entrepreneurs can learn from the model that Rent the Runway started with through the hopes of your foundation and training from this program, Project Entrepreneur? How do we get more young women from all over the country to start creating these $100 million companies?
Absolutely. So I think one of the keys is you start with one idea. Take Rent the Runway, it was renting dresses, but really that was just the tip of the iceberg. Now they're rolling out this new subscription for $89. It's really putting the closet in the cloud. Mm-hmm. So you start with one piece of a business that's really much larger. And so how do we get more women to think bigger and to think about, they may have this one piece of an idea, but how can it really scale and be that billion-dollar business?
And to come over the adversity of working in the business world as a woman. There are a lot of challenges. So as part of the training, how to deal with, workforce issues that may come up and the challenges of being a woman in the business sector.
Well, I think one of the best ways that we can combat that is having more women in the room. So more women VCs, more women entrepreneurs, the more it's less of a boys' club, then the more that kind of bad behavior that we've been seeing in the news becomes less acceptable and less part of the norm. And the more that women are coming out and talking about what is happening to them. So I think while we haven't done exactly training on how to deal with those situations, it's not a bad idea. It's really about creating this sisterhood and this community for women to support one another. We have amazing entrepreneurs coming in and leading workshops and mentoring these companies. And, we've got 400 alumni across the country who, not just for the duration of the 2 days that they're in New York, but for the duration of their journeys, they are supporting one another, they're calling one another, they're staying in touch with us, and it really becomes this kind of continuing community.
So how do women apply?
ProjectEntrepreneur.org.
Okay.
And so they need to have at least a a beta or prototype in place. They can't have raised over $100,000 of accredited funding. They need to have at least 50% ownership by a woman or women.
Okay.
And apply online. We're accepting applications through November 27th. And we hope to see all of them come to the intensive.
Anything notable from last year's participants?
Oh, so many things. I mean, we started in 2016, we're seeing companies now raising their $2 million seed rounds, and just from the finalists of our first year, we've seen $9 million raised. So we're starting to see the traction that these companies are getting, and last year's companies are amazing. We've got neuroscience wearables and food-grade beauty companies and, build your own wedding dress. So lots of diverse ideas from diverse founders across the country.
Speaking of diverse founders, do you take diversity into account with applicants?
So we don't have, it's not part of the selection criteria per se, but we are seeing organically 50% women of color from our applicants, from the class. Not only in terms of racial diversity, we're also seeing ages ranging from 18 to 70. We're seeing...
Oh, it's open to anyone then?
As long as they're at least 18. And almost all of the states represented in terms of applicants and industries across the board. So it's not just fashion, it's not just beauty, it's all industries. We've seen companies in agriculture, healthcare, education. So really we encourage all women entrepreneurs to think about applying.
Jennifer, Executive Director of Rent the Runway Foundation, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Our next guest created a company to help organizations collect the right data. That's important, right? Yeah, Tim Lawton and Naira Musallam are the founders of Frontier 7, which automates consumer data for businesses that are getting set up over here. How you folks doing?
Good. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
Sure. So we took the bold step, if you will, since we're here.
We use that word a lot.
To leave our corporate jobs a couple years ago with this bigger vision that now we'll talk about. But what we're doing specifically is creating software, a platform that sits at the crossroads of psychology and technology, machine learning and artificial intelligence to help organizations listen to their customers, reach out directly and gather that information, data, and there's ever so much more of it these days, and to really be able to understand and listen to their feelings, behaviors, and thoughts with a click of a button.
And what's important about that point of the click of a button, we're believers that the one thing, and we all know that nobody can give you back, is time. And we're increasingly living in a world where people want to have impact in their organizations and the work they're doing. And so we thought to ourselves, how can we take this extremely challenging, muddy area that requires typically expertise and take the expertise out of it and enable individuals just to answer the questions they want to answer with their consumers without having to worry about the nitty-gritty that goes into analyzing data, whether it's quantitative or qualitative in nature.
Yeah, so I'm someone who has a startup company. I don't understand anything about data analytics. But
Neither do I.
Perfect. You're a perfect fit for us.
So explain to me. I come with you. This is my startup company. How would data analytics or the services your company offer, how does that increase my business?
Yep. And actually, to hear you say that is, I think, just indicative of so many big and small. We've worked with organizations, Fortune 500, consumer packaged goods and retail companies, down to startups that have said, well, we're not a data analytics company. We're a product that sells T-shirts, hats, shampoo, beauty conditioner, whatever. They interact with their customers. It's their job to interact with their customers, to know their customers and sell their products. What our service is offering says you don't need to hire a team of data scientists. We are here, and what we want to do is automate a lot of those processes for you, so you don't have to know all that stuff. But you can still use the data you're already collecting. All these companies, any sort of retail consumer company that sells a product to a consumer, captures that data, now almost whether they know it or not and whether they know what to do with it or not. What we're doing is giving them a solution to how to take that data, analyze it, and be able to extract those understandings, those insights from it without having to know what that is. So our platform would reach out, whether it's email or SMS or social media, collect those data and those responses from consumers, and then without having a demo here to be able to explain it, analyze that for you and show you here's what the breakdown is as far as categories of behavioral actions or thoughts or what you consumers are actually thinking.
And in a world that is, I think, so full of competitive products, right? Like you got to understand, okay, at the end of the day, what makes certain brand more relatable than other? Why people like certain team more than different team, or shop versus another shop, regardless of the product. And we think that you got to understand, if you want to understand the human beings, you got to understand three things. We call it our ABC model, and it's basically you gotta understand affect, basically like the sentiments and how people feel about what you have to put out there in the world. We think you need to understand behaviors and how people are behaving, and then you need to understand the cognitions, the perceptions, how people are thinking. And so the combination of these three things, of putting humans at the center of technology and understanding that, is where we play.
So before we leave you, we want to know why data is important to entrepreneurs. So you're a startup, you're Kwame. I don't have a startup. I should. Got to practice what I preach here. Why is data important?
I think it's important for a number of different reasons, not the least of which today in 2017 and going forward, there's going to be so much more data that companies know what to do with, but it's going to be ever more critical to operating a business, as simple as a business may be or sound. It's the way that we interact with a changing consumer base and changing shopping behaviors. You have to understand and reach them where they are and the technology that they use. And all that technology just generates more and more data points to be able to understand that and distill it down to understandable points of this is the way that your customers are thinking. This is how they're acting, this is how they're interacting with you. And then you can then take that to optimize sales, marketing efforts, big or small. And like I said, we've worked with companies on both ends of the size spectrum, and both have used it in a similar way to get those results to kind of maximize and grow their business. I mean, data you can't really get away from these days.
And more importantly, not all data is created equal.
So the right data, I saw that.
Yeah.
You
gotta make sure that you have the relevant data that is gonna be relevant to insights to your business or organization.
Well, Frontier 7, check it out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So next we're going to get to play with some toys.
Oh.
Did you know that? Next we welcome Donald Coolidge. He's the CEO of CogniToys, which created an educational toy dinosaur that learns and grows with kids. The dino is powered by IBM's Watson, that computer that we've seen play Jeopardy. So evidently you bring with you a dinosaur.
I do. I come bearing gifts.
That's good. I got a 2-month-old daughter, so I need as many gifts as possible.
Fantastic.
So tell us, what does it do?
CogniToys are a lot like a kid-friendly Alexa or Siri.
Okay.
But they focus on fun learning. So math, grammar, spelling, games and stories, and we apply kid-friendly filters to all the content as well. We even teach.
So it's not going to mouth off like I've seen Siri do in a couple of videos, yeah.
It shouldn't, right? And it even, so like those sensitive questions, like where do babies come from? We have kid-friendly filters, so you get.
Does it flag it for the parents? Like topic came up.
Yeah, it does actually. So we do have a parent panel for parents.
Wow.
Now, what age is the toy recommended for?
We actually say 5 and up.
Okay.
And we just launched a new product called Stemasaur with 2 core new features. So kids get it in 10 different pieces, and they put it together kind of like a Lego set. Wow. Then they talk to it with their Siri for Kids like experience. Okay. And then we give kids a coding panel. And they can actually learn how to code new content on their Stemasaur.
Wow.
So how'd you come up with this idea?
Back in, I believe it was 2013, I read an article about how kids on the spectrum of autism were using Siri and creating unique relationships with Siri, and no one really knew why. And then our team sort of had the eureka moment, like, we can use this new technology, speech technology, to, not better use your iPhone or to order groceries, but to do things like teach kids.
Is it heavy?
It's not, so it's less than a pound.
Let's see. Wow, it is really light. And all that technology's in here?
Well, it's cloud-based. Right, so the device is actually very, very lightweight, and all the real processing, the brains are on the cloud, which actually allows us to update in real time. So as kids grow and they get smarter and smarter, we are actually able to change the device and become able to handle those new types of questions.
Does the dinosaur speak Mandarin or Chinese or Mandarin or Spanish yet?
You know, it's funny. We actually do have a Mandarin version right now.
Wow.
We're expanding into Asia actually pretty heavily. CogniToys are being used right now in South Korea to teach kids English as a second language, and also in mainland China.
Now, when I was growing up, you know, if you wanted to find an interactional toy, we had Leapfrog or Hooked on Phonics.
I had Leapfrog and Hooked on Phonics.
Really?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, so you're not that much older than me.
No, not that much older, no.
So where can you find these toys at right now currently?
In most of the major retailers, so we are available on Amazon, in Toys R Us, Brookstone, Barnes & Noble, and a few others as well.
Wow, how'd you pull that off?
A lot of hustle.
Yeah, yeah.
We're doing really well. One of the great things is when parents, or grandparents see a kid using it, it's sort of like, wow, this makes a ton of sense.
So how did you pull off, because, kids throw things around, and this is you said it's cloud computing, so there's not a lot going on in here, but, it has to be durable, right?
It does, and we probably over-engineered our first couple versions for that reason. You can toss that around, it's absolutely fine. There's not much on the device, really, lights, microphone, speakerphone, and a hardware chip.
So you just need Wi-Fi to operate this?
Just need Wi-Fi.
Wow. And you're a serial entrepreneur. This isn't your first, the Dino's not your first appearance on the entrepreneurial scene.
This would be my third tech company. Fingers crossed, all have been successful so far. My first foray into tech was actually a passion project, a music app with some friends. And then I sort of just got stuck in the tech industry. Loved it.
Wow. Now, I assume this is your first time marketing to children.
Absolutely.
Specifically, what is the different dynamics of when you switch to that market, to marketing for children, and not just for children, but an educational fund? A lot of times we buy toys just for the entertainment purposes, but this actually has an educational component.
Correct. So the fun element, so it is witty, it does crack jokes, is for the kids.
Okay.
For kids, they don't really want to feel like they're being sold a learning toy. And for parents, it's the education. The dynamic's really weird selling to two different markets, parents and kids. But the interesting thing in the industry now is you're seeing kids do more of their own discovery. Mm-hmm. YouTube Kids is huge, and my nieces and nephews are telling me what they want based on what they've seen off YouTube Kids.
Yeah. Now, how do you make something that's marketed to children for educational purposes, marketed for children as entertainment, but for parents as educational for their children? How do you make a company like that become successful and profitable?
It's a fine line. But if you can find the right mix of fun and educational, you can get kids wanting to use the product and learning at the same time. Mm-hmm. You sort of have the perfect mix. And I think that's what we found. In most of our materials, you see the wittiness, the fun element of the toy come out, but you can also see where there's sort of that learning element coming in as well.
So from Facebook, they're saying it's Smart Barney, so cute and smart. Barney was big when we were kids.
And the pink version, of course, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Any relation to Calvin Coolidge?
A little bit.
Really?
Yes.
So the descendant of one of our presidents invented the smart dinosaur here? Wow, amazing. So we always ask people the same question, advice for other entrepreneurs.
Well, if you want to get into tech, I don't code. Yeah, I've founded several tech companies, which is really a weird sort of dynamic. But tech is welcoming to all, and there's many skill sets needed in the tech industry. So if you want to get into tech, just start. Ask friends that are in tech about how they did it. And there's so many resources available now to learn how to code. It's cheaper than ever, and it's actually easy to learn.
Well, Donald, that's what 95% of people say on this show. So you have passed the test. Fantastic. And on that note, don't forget your dinosaur on the way out. Thank you so much.
Well, before you go, how much do these retail for?
$99.99.
That's pretty affordable. Well, there you go. Taking notes for your daughter.
Investment.
Donald Coolidge, thank you so much. Our next guest, speaking of serial entrepreneurs, is one herself. She co-founded DocFlight, a digital health company that connects Chinese patients to world-class medical expertise and services here in the United States. Sally Wang is a friend of mine, and she joins us now. How you doing, Sally?
Hi, David. How are you? Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how did you come up with this idea, the telemedicine, offering U.S. medical services to people in China?
So my mother was unfortunately ill with breast cancer 3 years ago. And taking her through the care taught me a lot about the challenges of getting a good doctor and figuring out what treatments to use. And that just it occurred to me that if someone like me with a substantial background in healthcare, so just a little bit about myself, I previously worked in the healthcare industry for 12 years as a business management consultant, as at the FDA, Senate Health Committee Health Office, as an IP and regulatory lawyer for pharmaceutical companies, and have a BA biology from Harvard and a JD and joint Master of Public Health. And someone with this background, it was so challenging for me. I could just only imagine for what it would be like for other patients.
So, a lot of people, telemedicine is a big deal now, but not a lot of people, when I think of telemedicine, I think of rural uses, but not a lot of people, your idea was the first time I ever heard of an international use. How did you think of that? So your family is originally from China, or you're from China as well,
yes,
correct?
I came to this country when I was 7.
Okay, so you have the language and you have whatnot, you have the expertise in 2 different cultures. How did you get it off the ground? Because a lot of times, it's a great idea, it's obviously going well now, but getting that first patient, setting up the network, was that difficult?
It certainly was, because I think in a two-sided marketplace, the side that pays is always the most difficult side to get. But fortunately, I think that we went with the B2B2C route, where we work with large Chinese companies, and that sort of kind of got us at least the ability to scale very quickly, fairly early on in our in our process. And then in terms of individual patients, I think people are very willing to refer patients to you when they know you. So our friends and family network was extremely helpful in getting us the first sets of patients and allowing us to do a little pilot to prove ourselves out.
Now, how big is the market for a company like yours, not just in America, but also in China? How are people actively and constantly looking for American medical practices?
Definitely. Actually, we estimate that around 140, target market is around 140 million.
Wow.
So it's half the size of the United States.
Yeah,
wow. So one of the interesting things is that cancer survival rates are much higher here than they are in other countries, even in Europe, but in China as well. So is that something that really helps people in China tap into that expertise that we have here, especially when it comes to cancer?
Definitely. It's really incredible what how low that rate is in China. So in the U.S., it's more than double that of China, and I think a lot of it's reflected in the quality of our doctors, their learnings and their abilities, and also the new drugs we have here. So the Chinese patients would benefit from all of those expertise.
Now, you're relatively young yourself. For anyone who's currently in school looking to get into the health field, what advice would you have for a young person that's looking to get in to not only save lives, but also to build some financial capital so that they can enjoy their life as well? What would be your advice for them?
I would say if you're interested in healthcare, just go head in. It's a great field.
It's growing.
It's growing.
It's always
yes.
growing.
It's
Yes.
anti-cyclic.
There will always be a need.
Yeah, people will always unfortunately get sick or need to improve their health. But my advice would be either take some classes or try get an internship that's related to the healthcare field, because it is a complicated industry, and to get your feet wet, you really need to just get into it. And learn about the industry.
So a lot of times it's funny because people from abroad are looking for U.S. expertise, but if you turn on the TV, we hear a lot of criticisms of our healthcare system. So this is high praise for our healthcare system, if anything. If people are looking for U.S. doctors and our cancer survival rates are higher, I guess we try not to get too political here, but what do you think some of the benefits of our healthcare system are compared to other healthcare systems?
I think one is that we have devoted a lot of resources to R&D. And that's really shining now, that we are just significantly better than many countries, especially developing countries, in treating complex diseases like cancer, a lot of rare diseases. The U.S. is, I feel like there's more of equality among patients, where patients with rare diseases have orphan drugs and other options that are often not available in other countries. And I think I'm very, very proud that how just diverse and how well balanced our healthcare system is in terms of treating a wide variety of diseases, especially the complex and rare diseases.
Sally, that was great. I rarely hear positive things about our healthcare system, so thank you so much. Sally Wang from DocFlight, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Dr. Paul Hokemeyer. He's a clinical and consulting psychotherapist who explores the culture of wealth and celebrity. This ought to be interesting, Kwame. His book on this topic is slated to be released next summer. Welcome, Dr. Paul.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hey, Dr. Paul.
Celebrity and wealth.
Indeed,
Sounds
a good topic,
glamorous
right,
and
for
wonderful,
Tuesday
but it
morning.
comes with some problems, doesn't it?
Indeed, it does.
And what are some of those problems?
Well, we live in a world that's where we're very fractured. We're very fractured from each other. We're very fractured from ourselves. And when we have a world that's oriented around celebrity, we tend to focus outside of ourselves and constantly striving for something, this unattainable goal. And so we're left with a personal and a social malaise.
It's all about expectations, isn't it?
It's definitely about expectations.
I was reading yesterday that the most important thing in a relationship is expectations.
Sure.
Have you heard that before, Kwame?
Yeah.
I thought it was trust, but
Well, you know better than I do. You're the psychotherapist. I can't even tell you where I read it, the Daily Mail or whatever, some UK publication.
So, Dr. Paul, what do you think it is about being a celebrity or having the attention from social media that forces people to sometimes become mentally unhealthy and partake in those type of practices?
you know, any goal is we're goal-oriented human beings, and so we always want to have a goal to strive for. The issue with celebrity is sometimes it overcomes the person, and so they focus all of their attention and energy on attaining this outward measure of success, and they haven't developed the internal construct to deal with relationships, right? And expectations in relationships and trust in relationships, or dealing with the stresses of the world. So they haven't developed what's called an internal locus of control. So they feel like they're in charge of their lives and their destiny. They're always looking for something outside of themselves to validate them and make them feel whole.
So, but a lot of people are Instagram influencers now. So it's not just the very top. We seem to have democratized celebrity. I don't know so much about wealth, but definitely celebrity. You know, does that get to a lot of people's heads? You know, having 30,000 followers on Instagram or something like that?
Yeah, it does. So we look in my book, I sort of look at the trajectory of celebrity. And so celebrity changes over time to reflect really the dominant mode of expression. So when we were all sitting around campfires talking about celebrities, they were mythology. Now, of course, anyone, it seems, can be a celebrity just by virtue of being connected. And so there is this democratization of celebrity, as you said. And so we have an extraordinary number of opportunities to compare ourselves with other people. And there's this great saying that to compare is to despair. So if we're constantly comparing ourselves or sort of looking to see how many likes we've gotten, it can be a very unfulfilling way to live.
Compare is to despair.
Compare
That's
is to
very
despair.
You an Instagram influencer or something,
Well,
Kwame?
I mean, as someone whose life changed drastically overnight from a viral video.
Of course.
I know all about, you start checking for, well, how many people? I went from having 40 followers on Twitter to now over 16,000, which isn't, a lot compared to social media influencers. Well, what advice would you give to someone who might find themselves in a situation where one night they are a regular average Joe or Jane, and then the next day they are viral and all across the internet? How would you prepare? What advice would you give them to mentally prepare themselves for the newfound fame?
Yeah, I think look at two things. The first is it's not you. It doesn't define who you are as a human being. And the second is realize that with all of this good and all of the positive, there's some negative attached to it. So don't ignore the fact that there's going to be some negative repercussions, and have a mechanism to talk about it and be aware of the fact that it doesn't define who you are, and that simultaneous with those external likes, kind of constantly be working on yourself to figure out how you want to be in the world in a significant way. And there's no shortage of opportunities.
So we've talked a lot about celebrity, but let's talk about wealth. We've all had friends that have hit it big. You know, they've done well in their careers. They've been entrepreneurs, and ding, 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 they have a unicorn suddenly. How does that play into this whole celebrity wealth? Are they together? Are they separate? How does that work?
So in my book, I talk about celebrity very broadly. And so celebrity is basically a feature of a person that makes them be viewed as an object. So wealth is one way people can be viewed as a celebrity. Your last name can be viewed as a celebrity. Beauty is a way that people are objectified and become a celebrity. So wealth is a very distinct way that people become celebrities. Now, in our society and our culture, we have a very schizophrenic view of wealth, right? We idolize it, and we demonize it all in the same breath.
All at the same
All at the
time.
same
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah.
In the flash of an eye. And so that there's some very unique characteristics that come with that. And there's identifying features of that. So there's profound isolation that occurs when people manifest themselves in wealth. There's a suspiciousness of outsiders. And there's this concept called hyperagency, which is this capacity to control the externals of your life. So I can arrange my life to avoid any sort of discomfort because I have enough coin to kind of just leave the scene whenever I want to.
Essentially, buy new friends.
I new friends.
Oh, God, that could get
or
political
acquaintances.
real
I don't know if they're going to be really friends.
Well, Dr. Paul, we look forward to the book. What's it
Thank
called
you.
and when is it coming out?
The book is tentatively titled Starstruck.
Okay.
And it's scheduled to be released in fall of 2018.
Well, let us know when you put the book out, and we'll have you back, okay?
Great, super. Thank you
Thanks,
very
Dr.
much.
Paul.
Thanks.
Our next two guests are part of our Bookstr segment. Bookstr is a website for book lovers and much more. Our first author wrote Inconceivable, a woman's triumph over despair and statistics. Julia Indichova is here to talk about her own difficulties with fertility that led her to write this book over 20 years ago. How you doing?
It was really over 20 years ago. It's hard to really imagine that it's taken so long.
I won't tell you how old I am then.
And Sarah Hill is also here. Sarah is the co-founder of Bookstr. She always comes with our authors, of course.
Yes. Hi, guys.
How's it
Nice
going?
to meet you.
Doing well, thank you. I'm
So-
excited about this book.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Sarah, as a young female, is
Yeah.
fertility something that on your mind?
100%, especially as I'm getting older. I'm almost 30, and I'm not dating anyone. I can go ahead and put that publicly, I guess.
There's a waiting list, though.
Thank you.
The DMs are popping.
They're lining up. I'm
Lining
sure.
up. But this is something that's really a concern for me. And actually, I even have girlfriends now who come over and they're like, oh, I can't drink. I'm trying to get pregnant. And I'm like, oh my God, it's terrifying. And a lot of them are just now starting this journey on whether they can conceive or can't conceive. But it's scary. Like, it's really terrifying, especially if you have this life plan of, hey, I'm going to have kids by the time I'm 35 or by the time I'm 40, and you can't.
And then it's not happening.
Yeah,
Right.
and I know it's got to be so isolating. And
It can
so-
be.
Tell me, yeah.
It can be isolating. And when I was first diagnosed, I certainly felt very lonely and scared. And even though I actually already had a child, so when I was diagnosed, I was in my 40s, and I was diagnosed with this hormonal imbalance that meant that I could not conceive. I was told that I could not conceive through assisted reproduction or in any other way. I was essentially told that my childbearing years were over.
Out of business.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But you conceived naturally at age 44, correct?
I conceived naturally. I was almost 44. Yes, I did. And but at first, I was in that position that you're talking about. I became very depressed, and for about a year, I was just searching for someone who would tell me that a pregnancy was possible. Not that I had 5% or 10% chance of conceiving,
You want to hear good
which
news.
is, but I just wanted somebody to tell me, yes, it's possible you can get pregnant. And I couldn't find, I went from specialist to specialist, and then I went from mainstream specialists on Park Avenue, I went to Chinatown to alternative healthcare practitioners, and I still wasn't getting pregnant. So one day I had this epiphany. I thought, I think I have an opinion on this condition, and what if I just create more energy in my body? What if I just do what I can to become as healthy as possible on every level? And that's what I did. And 8 months later, I conceived without medical intervention. And then I just, I was just telling Sarah that I wasn't a writer. I had no plans to write books or certainly, to teach about baby making. But I felt so strongly about passing on my story because, again, what you were talking about, because it just suddenly, everywhere I went, I was meeting women who were going through this. And I said, I have to do something to pass on my story. So
I
first-
think it's so
yeah.
good that you did. There's so many women who are like ashamed the second
Yes.
that they find out that they
Yes.
can't do it.
Yes.
It's like there's something biologically wrong with you.
You know, that is such an important point. There is so much shame connected with a fertility-related issue, and I'm really passionate about just creating a community that talks about shedding the shame and talking about it and being open about it and saying there is absolutely nothing wrong with us. There's no shame in having this particular difficulty. It's actually the opposite. It's, for me, it really became this big break. It became this incredible opportunity. And I think that it can. I mean, that's what I teach. That's what my whole life's been about in the last 20 years, is to talk to women and to really encourage them to reframe this particular challenge. Because I do think, a fertility challenge, it's a different health challenge than any other challenge. It's like, it's not a disease in the usual sense of the word. So it becomes, there is something going on either physical or emotional or spiritual level, and it can be this incredible healing opportunity if we engage fully with our treatment process, with our healing. So that's what the...
You came up with this holistic system, right?
Yes.
It looks at it from multiple angles.
Yes.
It's not just this hormone level,
Exactly.
or, it's not this little formula like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
chemically, you're just not going to do it. It's viewing at it from a 360 degree.
Yes, absolutely. It's it's called the fertile heart ovum practice, and in the fertility world, people often talk about raising the egg quality or raising sperm quality. I'm constantly getting emails like, could you tell me, how do I raise my egg quality?
You got to treat yourself well, right?
Exactly.
Isn't that the foundation of all of this?
And I say, your eggs and your reproductive system and the sperm, it's all a reflection of your overall level of health. It's all happening in this one incredible human organism with many, many different variables. Every thought, every feeling has an impact on our fertility. And so that's what the very, I conceived them, really, David, more than figured it out. I really conceived them.
You conceive these ideas to promote conception.
Exactly. So the tools are beautiful mind-body tools, very carefully crafted visualizations, movement that help people identify essentially what is blocking conception on all those levels. What is blocking conception on a physical level? Is there something going on? What is blocking conception on an emotional level? This is such an emotionally charged issue that all of those things really have a huge impact. So.
Well, Julia
That's what the work
Indichova,
is about.
author of Inconceivable, 20 years later, still super relevant.
Yeah.
Catch it on Amazon or at your local bookstore.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, continuing our Bookstr segment, we have Malcolm Lemmons, an entrepreneur and author of Lessons from the Game. The book follows his unlikely journey from the streets of Washington, D.C. to accomplishing his lifelong dream of becoming a professional athlete and then, of course, navigating life after sports. How's it going?
Good. Thank you.
We're going to
for
have to
having me.
adjust that chair. You're so tall.
I'm not that tall.
Obviously, basketball player. So naturally, you are tall.
Yeah.
So what are the lessons from the game?
Well, I wanted to, impose some of the things that I've learned from sports in this book and kind of tell my story and highlight, those particular lessons, such as, learning to be patient, learning to, be self-motivated, self-driven, learning to manage your time, all things that are applicable to other areas of life. And I really just want to impart some of these lessons on other athletes and really just shed, my journey and the things that I've learned that can be applied to any area of life.
We've seen the ESPN series 30 for 30 going broke. There are a couple of new found, star athletes, Ezekiel Elliott being one of them, where his father has come out and he said that my son isn't ready to be famous, but he's such a phenomenal athlete. What advice would you give to Ezekiel Elliott? He's been arrested, he's facing suspension, but he's also such a great athlete. What advice would you give to overcome this transformation from college athlete to now celebrity football player?
So one of the things that I actually talk about in the book is surrounding yourself with the right types of people. So I think the people that you put in your immediate circle on a daily basis have a large impact on your life. And I think that Ezekiel Elliott needs to surround himself with better people, whether that's a better agent, better public relations teams, whoever it is. He's not around the right people.
Better friends,
right? Or just they're giving him the wrong advice, or they're leading him down the wrong direction or the wrong path. So I think he needs to surround himself with better people, and kind of visualize where he wants to be and how he sees his future.
You talk quite a bit in the book about visualization, which I think is great. And also, I didn't get to read all of the book, but I did get to read some of it, and it is very beautifully written and very straightforward. So I think that you did a great job there. What do you mean when you say visualize? Like, it's such a kind of vague concept for you. How did that work, and how would Ezekiel Elliott be able to start his visualization into a cleaner life, I guess?
So you hear about people talk about the law of attraction, correct? And it's kind of seeing what you want and what you think about what you want the most will eventually come to you. For me, that's really what happened with my dream of my entire life. I wanted to be a professional athlete. It's what I saw every day. It's what I prepared for. It's what I planned for. And I think it's not enough to visualize, but you actually have to put a strategy, a plan into action. And I think that, once you visualize, it all starts in the mind. And once you see what you want, and you actually strategize and you plan and you work towards that, anything you want is possible. So that's why I really talk about, your mindset and visualization being so powerful.
For anybody that's striving to become a professional athlete, what advice would you give them for life after sports?
Oh, man, it's tough because, you have such a tunnel vision when you play sports. You have to be focused on that sport around the clock, especially when you get to college and, even to the pros. It's that sport 100%. And if you don't focus on that sport, you're a step behind, or somebody's getting ahead of you. And it's such, it's so competitive nowadays. So preparing for life after sport, I think athletes have to start thinking about, what their passions are, what they're interested in outside of the game. Not necessarily acting on that, because your full focus should be your sport, but start thinking about it and start planning for life after sport, because it's going to come a day where that sport ends and you have to do something else in your life. So.
And you help athletes as well start building their personal brand. Can you kind of talk about the importance of that, and what do they have to bring to the table once they're no longer playing basketball or football, which I think is a lot, because you learn so much through sports in general about life, but how do you even start instilling that process in them?
So it goes back to actively thinking about what your interests and your passions are outside of sports, and thinking about what you want to do next. So I think nowadays everyone has to have a personal brand. Everyone has a personal brand. And by me building my personal brand, it's afforded me opportunities outside of basketball. So I think, athletes having such a large fan base, and, they're just being able to be recognized by such a large amount of people, their brand is expansive, and they're able to explore tons of opportunities outside of sports if they take advantage of their celebrity and, their time playing their sport. But I think they really have to start while they still have that attention on them, while they still have that awareness around with their name, and actively start building their brand while they're still playing. So the opportunities are still there once they're done playing.
Is high school too early? Because I know in your book you talk about high school athletes and all the way through professional. Do you think high schoolers is that too early to start thinking about it, or no?
Not at all. I think really life after sports, thinking about life after sports should start the minute you start playing sports, because that end game is going to be there regardless of whether you play for 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. So high school athletes are getting, more and more exposure. They're playing on ESPN. They have a brand that they have to think about. And, like I said, life after sports is going to come. So even then, they have to start thinking about what else they want to do, what else they're passionate about, and what career opportunities they possibly want to pursue once they're done playing.
Wow. I mean, do you feel like a lot of the skills from being good at sports can be parlayed into other facets of life?
Definitely. So I talk a lot about, like I said, patience and, just hard work, teamwork, being self-driven, having, to organize your schedule, time management, all things that I've learned in sports that I've been able to apply in every other area of my life that has, helped me be successful. So I think when you talk about transitioning to another career, athletes don't have the tangible experience, the job experience in the workforce, but they have those intangibles and those traits and skills that are able to be applied in anything that you do.
And they have a network too.
And yeah, they definitely have a network. So that's why, I say you have to take advantage while you're still playing, and that network is really relevant.
So Malcolm Lemmons, author of Lessons of the Game, thank you so much. And Sarah Hill, which if you can catch me on Bookstr, Sarah's been kind enough to let me show my trade on Bookstr's Facebook page. So you can catch me there. You can also catch Sarah and our friend Julia Sun and other friendly people from Bold. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys. And thank you. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
And as always, thank you for watching Bold Business. A special thanks to my entire staff and to our guest anchor, Kwame Rose. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Remind me when the documentary comes out, Baltimore Rising?
November 20th at 8 p.m. on HBO, and then after the premiere date, it'll be available for free on HBO.com.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kwame. And be sure to join us next week. We'll have an entirely new lineup of guests and a special spooky edition of Bold Business for Halloween. We'll see you then.